Let's go ahead and talk about the game Saturday. Chapman Stadium, T-Town, Tulsa. Schools are separated by, around 2 hours. Remember, it's an 11 a.m. kickoff on Saturday. So if you plan on having some extracurricular activity Friday night, make sure that a buddy, family member calls you or you have that alarm set. Otherwise, you're going to be cutting it pretty close for that kickoff between OU and TU. Game will be on ABC for most of the country. The northeast part of the country will get the game on ESPN2. Sooners, by the way, still a favorite by more than 3 touchdowns. In fact, the line is at 24.5 points. And if the Sooners, if last week is any indication of what we'll see this week, the Sooners should have this game in hand, even though I know that wet weather and much cooler temperatures, it looks like, are evident for this game. Sooners, their offense, we know that Trevor Knight played well in the first half. Second half, when the game was pretty much out of hand, the Sooners, kind of called off the dogs. Knight played just average, okay? So he knows that, as good as this debut this season was compared to his original debut, which is at this time last year, it was like night and day. No pun intended, of course. But his play never is going to be that great if the running game doesn't get going. Of course, last week, mission accomplished. Ground game was not only solid, but we saw several participants get involved, and they'll have to do the same thing tomorrow against Tulsa's defense. Keith Ford and Alex Ross combining for 4 touchdowns. But in terms of yardage and yards per carry, it was Samuje Perrine that was the highlight. Nearly 6 yards a carry. Matter of fact, 13 carries, 78 yards, and a touchdown. In fact, 5 of Oklahoma's 6 touchdowns against the Bulldogs last week were by running backs. The other one, which was a non-running back, that was wide receiver Sterling Shepard with a touchdown, and almost had a second if he had not trapped the ball on a particular play in the back of the end zone. But still, a nice game for the OU receivers, but it was really the running game that I thought stole the show for the Crimson and Cream. It'll have to pretty much be the same thing, and that's going to be my first key to this game for Oklahoma versus Tulsa, and that is Oklahoma, make sure you have the runs, okay? And I'm not talking about that reaction you get after taking laxatives, okay? Talking about making sure that ground game predicates everything else. I think the Oklahoma offensive line, like they did last week against La Tech, will have an advantage against Tulsa's defensive front. Not just because of talent, but just because of scheme. And because Tulsa, last year, one of the biggest reasons why they only won 3 games was because they had a hard time stopping opponents on the ground. And, as many yards as they gave up last year on the ground, last week against not UTEP, but last week against Tulane, they gave up even more yards than they did average, even though it's just one game. Despite the win against the Green Wave, how about giving up close to 250 yards on the ground? And now you're going to be facing one of the best offensive lines in the country with a ground game that we found out now, besides Ford and Ross, 2 capable backs. Now you have Perrine, who's a bruising back. Okay, he can move, but also, too, he can carry defenders with him, as we saw last week against the Bulldogs. Okay, Louisiana Tech had a hard time bringing them down. So I'll expect that Tulsa will probably take some chances, take some blitzes, try to do whatever they can to stuff that ground game. That can give opportunities for Trevor Knight to get those favorable matchups, not just with Sterling Shepard, but also, too, a guy that Bob Stoops praised during his Monday press conference, and that is KJ Young. Key number 2 of this game, don't let Dane cook you. Get it? Dane Cook? Of course, his name's not Dane Cook. It is Dane Evans, all right? But you get the Hollywood twist right there. Dane Evans, last season, started 5 games and really played below average. In fact, he threw for more interceptions than touchdowns, and it wasn't even close. Even though it's just one game this season, it was their American Conference debut. It was a conference game, a double overtime win over Tulane, and Evans looked noticeably better. Threw for 4 TDs. He did have interceptions, but only 2, and completed, almost 60% of his passes. And the big thing, he had over 400 yards passing through the air. So a remarkable improvement for Mr. Evans. And there's also one other element in this game that's worth noting, which we'll talk about on point number 3. But Evans, I think, has the confidence now that he can do some good things. Now, granted, this will be probably the best defense that he's played all season long in Oklahoma. But coming into this game with the win is a lot better than coming with loss, especially the way that Tulsa did it last week in dramatic fashion. So Sooners got to be aware of not just Keevan Lucas, who, by the way, made his impact in the AAC, even though Tulsa's a new member of that conference. He was a conference's player of the week for that conference win against the Green Wave. 13 catches, 233 yards, and how about 3 TDs? Lucas, by the way, it's the infancy of the season, already leads the nation in receiving yardage with that 233 total. But if the Sooners have anything to say about it, it should be a little bit more rough going for him. But Sooners can't just focus on that guy. Otherwise, Connor Floyd or Kearis Garrett could end up burning them. Key number 3 of this game to me, no cardiac canes, okay? And this is why I think Evans probably has a little more confidence now than he did at this point last year. Tulsa was behind by 8 points in that game last week. And not only did Evans lead them downfield and they got the touchdown to get them within 2, but they got the 2-point conversion right after to tie it. And, of course, the rest is history. Tulsa won the game in double overtime. So I'm not going to guarantee that Oklahoma is going to be leading in this game early because, anything's possible. But, anybody looking at this game and doesn't have an allegiance toward either the Golden Hurricane or Sooners will probably tell you that the Sooners are going to lead early, and they might even get, a double-digit lead early on. But the big thing for the Sooners is to keep the foot down on the gas pedal, okay? Don't give Tulsa any belief that it can come from behind. Tulane didn't do that last week. They had them down. They blew an opportunity. Tulsa tied it, and then Tulane eventually lost the game. So this will be, again, the situations where the front 3 of Oklahoma must do the job like they did last week against La Tech. Jordan Phillips at defensive lineman getting pressure up the gut. Tulsa last week I thought was just average on the ground. I think their leading ball carrier had 80 yards, and that was pretty much it. I think the second leading rusher might have been Evans, the quarterback. So for the defensive ends, for Ndule and for Tapper, opportunity to have a big game. It didn't even have to be as far as quarterback sacks. Just get pressure on him. Make him throw early. Get in his space. Make it as uncomfortable for him as possible. And then that happens, then the cardiac canes title will be short-lived from last week. In other words, have him down, keep him down, don't let him up. Number 4, and I'm adding this factor in too, okay? And doing the show late is kind of a blessing in disguise because early in the week they did project that rain would hit the Tulsa area for Saturday morning's kickoff. Well, now it looks evident that it's going to happen. 70% chance of rain from the last forecast I heard, and the temperature is going to be in the mid-70s. You talk about a big contrast from the hot weather we've been getting lately. Yeah, there you go. Mid-70s for a high, 70% chance of the wet stuff. So for the Sooners, secure that ball. Don't make it like a bar of soap. Don't have that thing, flopping everywhere along the field. It's the one way that an underdog like Tulsa can cash in on your mistakes is if you give them the ball. And on a day like on Saturday, ball security now more than ever will be the main thing. You can live with a punt, but it's going to be hard to live with giving Tulsa great field position on a regular basis if you allow the weather to be a factor. And by the way, the weather could hurt Tulsa as well because they are a predominant throwing team. So if the weather is going to be what we think it's going to be, and by the way, if the wind is a swirling wind, it's going to be really hard for Evans to get those passes completed. Of course, the Sooners, we mentioned that, they're a pretty balanced attack. Final thoughts on this game. I know that weather, I'm not saying favors the underdog, but I know it usually helps the underdog and is somewhat of a neutralizer. Last season, the Sooners had their way with the Golden Hurricane. And even though Tulsa won last week in double overtime, it was against Tulane, not a world beater. Tulsa will have home field advantage, but I'd still expect a good contingency of Sooner fans to be there. To make a long story short, there really is no reason to believe that Tulsa should be able to get within 3 touchdowns of these guys if the Sooners take care of business and don't think ahead to Tennessee the following week. I don't think they will. I think the Sooners get the job done and play another week of solid football. I'm going to go, in this case, I'm going to go 38-10. Okay, 38-10. Weather probably will keep Oklahoma's point total from getting near the half-century mark, but still they should win comfortably 38-10. I think they'll cover that 24.5. My post-game show, by the way, since I'll be at my real job as soon as the Oklahoma-Tulsa game's over on Saturday, my post game show will not be on until late Saturday. So if you're looking for my post game right after the game, you won't find it. It'll come on later on. Again, I'll be at my real job, so we'll have that post game late Saturday between the Sooners and Golden Hurricane. Boomer Sooner.